increase in visual fidelity and frame rate. It ran with averages of 48 frames per second, dropping down to 38 frames per second when there was a lot going on. It's safe to say that this is the CPU's fault, but regardless of this, the experience was definitely more than playable. Moving on to CSGO returned us with averages of 93 frames per second and lows down to 64 when the game got tough. It was more than playable overall and was run with medium settings in the 1080p resolution. Lowering the settings a bit may yield you a small increase, but personally it wasn't worth the drop in quality. Fallout 4 here, with the high settings selected in the 1080p resolution, gave us a great experience. The game ran with averages of 40 FPS and minimums down to 28 FPS when a lot was going on. However, in the quieter areas in the game would run at a locked 60 FPS, so not only did it look amazing, it ran great. Doom, on the other hand, the newest game we'll be testing, was running with a mixture of medium and high settings in the 1080p resolution. It yielded us a very similar experience with 38 FPS averages and minimums of 27 FPS when there was a lot going on. Lowering these settings a bit would achieve you a solid 60 FPS though. As for early access titles up next, we've chosen The Forest. It runs pretty nicely with the high settings considering how taxing the game can be. It got us an average of 42 FPS and lows down to 31 FPS when a lot was going on. Definitely not bad for such a cheap PC. Finally, we tested out Mad Max, which is being run in the high settings. We saw averages of 64 frames per second and lows down to 58 FPS when there was a lot going on. So this PC is pretty much capable of playing the latest releases with high settings enabled in the 1080p resolution. As for recording, we ran OBS to encode in the 720p resolution and a bitrate of 2500 kilobits a second. The recording turned out okay, but game performance did suffer a bit with it dropping down to 40 frames per second, which is definitely still a playable experience, but not really what you want if you real gaming. First up, we have PlayerUnknown's Battlegrounds, which is going to be one of the harder games to run as expected. We saw 35 FPS on average with 900p and the low settings, which to my eyes was pretty damn playable for essentially a £50 computer. It was better than the Xbox One version of the game for sure, and really the CPU and GPU together are holding us back, but they pair up quite nicely, as the game does require 4 threads and luckily i3 does provide them, admittedly a little bit weaker than the ones it would like. However, with 26 FPS 1% lows and 0.1% lows of 14 FPS, we could see that it did struggle during the actual playing down. But the CPU and GPU were very balanced and I saw no issues with how the game was running. Do keep in mind these were some decent enough settings and I was fully able to play a match and even get a couple of kills with these settings. Fortnite, which has lately been surpassing PUBG in popularity, ran great with 43 FPS on average throughout our entire time playing, with the 900p resolution and the low and medium settings used, which made the game look pretty fine while it was running, as I like to get a nice balance between graphical fidelity and frame rate, which of course makes it much easier to play in my opinion. Of course, Fortnite is way more optimised than the likes of the aforementioned PUBG, and I was still able to completely play that fine, so this was absolutely okay. Of course, the game didn't slow down too much at all aside from the initial approach, and even in action, as you can see, the game ran completely fine. As for the likes of CSGO, a game that I was sort of debating between benchmarking, but then remembered that this game is a lot more bloated, so it makes sense to give it a test on a system like this in 2018. So running with most of the settings set to low aside from Shadows on high in the 1080p resolution, returns with a very playable and very pleasant 99 FPS on average, which is way more than playable for most games and is pretty decent for competitive play in CSGO. But then again, if you want hundreds of FPS, then you should probably get a better PC than this. However, from my time playing, I found it completely fine and the game's performance was brilliant, so the main way I was playing bad was purely probably because of myself, so I can't blame that on the PC. GTA 5 is still one of the most popular games on Steam, so I did decide to give it a little test out there to see how it handles those sort of open world games on a system like this. And it ran very similarly to an SFF PC I built a little while ago, which was of course a little bit less powerful but was also cheaper. And this was very similar with high settings in 900p bringing us a 32 FPS average, with 1% lows down to 19 FPS and 0.1% lows bring us down to 16 FPS at the very worst of times. Looking great and running very similarly to that of an Xbox One or PS4 console, the R9 255 did struggle occasionally, likely due to that DDR3 VRAM compared to our usual GDDR5 we see on most cards, however still very playable. Fallout 4 ran fine with a mixture of low and medium settings for a return of 31 FPS on average. It looked better than the console variants of the game in some aspects and would even hit slightly higher results when you're inside a building or were travelling around the wastes. The game could even see higher results if we had a better GPU, as the CPU wasn't struggling too badly even in the most intense parts of the city, so definitely playable on a system like this. Once again, before the comments section is flooded with about 500 comments saying can it run Crysis, it can in fact run Crysis nicely in the 900p resolution with medium and high settings selected, which looked great and ran perfectly fine at a stable frame rate of 34 FPS on average, which is decent considering how taxing the game can be on a system like this. The dual-core nature of the i3 didn't seem to struggle either, and the graphics card holds up remarkably well in quite a demanding title. But so far we've only really tried games that have taxed the GPU to the max. What happens when we push that i3 to the limits? Well, I tried out City Skylines, which I just tried with a little city so far, as we do know that the larger cities are guaranteed to struggle, but even so we saw 36 FPS on average, which was perfectly playable in a slower paced game like this. Medium settings looked fine and the 900p resolution didn't exactly make things bad on the system either. These things always prove taxing in the late game, so do expect slowdown on both the CPU and GPU as your city becomes larger, but for the most part these smaller cities should perform absolutely fine. Minecraft is a game that people will always end up playing at some point, so with some nice shaders in the 1080p resolution and some fancy settings, we saw a playable 33 FPS on average with some decent frame times to boot, including a couple of drops when the world was actually loading in. But that happens on most PCs, so I was going to say the game is pretty damn smooth for the most part. You could however just completely remove the shaders and you'll see a solid 60 plus FPS, but personally I do quite enjoy the shaders, so I decided to keep them in for this benchmark. Wolfenstein 2 is our final test out there as it uses the Vulkan renderer, but even with the lowest settings in 480p it just wasn't smooth enough, it just didn't feel right. And I mean sort of the FPS on average shows that, but really it's down to our weaker GPU, and it just met its match in a game like this as it's very demanding. The CPU is only seeing around 20% in usage because of this and the frame times were all over the place, but generally this doesn't even look remotely playable. So although the end of our final gaming tests, I did decide to test recording capabilities with a machine like this. So here was a quick 1080p recording done with AMD's Relive software, which is included with the drivers on the graphics card. It uses the onboard AMD VCE encoder, which I've already found superior to Nvidia's NVENC and Intel's QuickSync. In fact, it's actually quite close to software encoding for most things, aside from streaming, in which case you should always use this, but I've actually got away with streaming on VCE before, back when an i3 was my full chip. So yes, you can actually use VCE for streaming at lower bit rates, although for recording we saw this perfectly clear Skyrim gameplay clip, which was recorded in 1080p with the high settings. The FPS test is of course without recording, but we didn't seem to lose any FPS from the recording as you can see. So 44 FPS on average was definitely playable for Skyrim, the game looked great and the recording did look decent, so yes you can record on a machine like this.
What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and I'm talking directly at the toner mic, and this is without removing the background noise. What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and I'm talking directly at the toner mic, and this is with the removal of the background noise. What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and I'm talking directly in the Florian mic, and this is without removing the background noise. What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and I'm talking directly in the Florian mic, and this is with the background noise removed. What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and this is what it sounds like when I hook up the Florian mic directly into my Focusrite audio interface, and this is without any editing. What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and I'm talking directly at the newer mic, and this is without the removal of the background noise. What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and I'm talking directly at the newer mic, and this is with the removal of the background noise. What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and I'm talking directly at the newer mic hooked up to my Focusrite audio interface, and once again this is without any editing. What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and I'm talking directly at the Blue Snowball mic, and this is without removing the background noise. What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and I'm talking directly at the Blue Yeti mic with the removal of the background noise. What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and I'm talking directly at the iPhone 6s Plus without any editing or without any microphones hooked up. What's up guys, it's Ed from TechSource and I'm talking with the mic hooked up on my shirt, and once again this is without any editing.
Let's go to see the stars and the moon. I'd fly far into space as long as I am with you. The light in my bright eyes when you're near.
Tell me pretty lies, look me in the face. Tell me that you love me.